As diplomats gathered for a new round of U.S.-Iran talks, the northern edge of Israel lit up again with sirens, smoke, and the familiar rhythm of escalation. The timing was hard to miss. Just as delegates prepared to sit down, Hezbollah announced fresh rocket and drone attacks, signaling that whatever is being discussed in conference rooms, the Lebanon front is not waiting for anyone's permission to move. The message, at least of Hezbollah's telling, is that the border war is not a side issue to be managed later. It is central, and it will stay loud until it is addressed. In a fast-moving sequence of claims and counterclaims, Hezbollah described a coordinated wave of strikes into northern Israel, while Lebanese media reported deadly Israeli airstrikes in the south. Israel, for its part, said it had carried out a broad air campaign across Lebanon, claiming large Hezbollah casualties and strikes on a wide network of sites. All of it unfolded against a diplomatic backdrop that is, by des igna, supposed to be about containment, limiting Iran's nuclear program, stabilizing regional flashpoints, and preventing a wider war. But the battlefield on the Israel-Lebanon border has its own momentum. And this week, that momentum surged. On April 11th, Hezbollah said it fired rockets toward the Israeli area of Adomit and launched attack drones at Israeli troops near Meshula, close to the northern frontier. In its own accounting, Hezbollah said it used 54 rocket weapons, 15 drones or aircraft, and 5 artillery shells across multiple attacks. It also claimed it deployed 2 qualitative weapons, language it uses to suggest something more advanced than standard rockets, often implying precision-guided munitions, guided missiles, or specialized drones. One of Hezbollah's most prominent claims involved a strike on an Israeli Merkava tank near the border area of Odaisesh, describing a combined attack using a guided missile and a supporting drone strike. Another drone operation was Repo. Threaded against Israeli troops near a school area in the border zone, Israeli communities in the north reported air raid sirens amid suspected drone intrusions, sending civilians back to shelters and reinforcing the sense that the border contest is no longer contained to sporadic exchanges. Just a day earlier, Hezbollah had already been signaling a higher tempo. It claimed roughly 70 operations in a single 24-hour period, saying dozens of those strikes crossed into Israeli territory, while others targeted Israeli positions and activity near the border. Hezbollah also asserted that some operations reached deep into Israel, claims that are difficult to independently verify in real time, but are part of its effort to project reach and deterrence. The group's statements listed damage to tanks, border fortifications, and settlement area sites as outcomes of the latest escalation. It framed the attacks as part of an ongoing campaign tied to the wider regional conflict, presenting the northern front as both retaliation and pressure on Israel, and pressure on any diplomatic framework that tries to isolate Lebanon from broader negotiations. Israel's response and its broader posture was unequivocal. It is not treating Lebanon as a frozen front awaiting a political deal. Israeli officials have repeatedly said the goal is to remove the threat posed by Hezbollah's rocket and drone capabilities and to restore security for residents of northern Israel, many of whom have been displaced for months by the border fighting. In parallel with Hezbollah's claims of intensified fire, Lebanese outlets reported new Israeli strikes hitting southern Lebanon, including in the Nabatea area. According to those reports, one airstrike killed multiple people, including a paramedic who was said to have been working at the scene. Another strike reportedly killed additional people, including a civil defense member, and wounded others. A separate strike was described as leaving people dead and injured under rubble. The casualty figures and identities were presented through Lebanese reporting, while Israel has tended to emphasize its targeting of militant infrastructure and operatives. Israel, meanwhile, said its April 8th air campaign across Lebanon killed at least 180 Hezbollah operatives, describing strikes on roughly 100 Hezbollah-linked sites across southern Lebanon, the Bekaa Valley, and areas including the suburbs of Beirut. Israel has often framed such operations as preemptive or retaliatory, arguing that Hezbollah's military infrastructure is embedded across civilian areas and that the group's cross-border attacks require sustained pressure. As the violence continued, political signals also started to compete with the battlefield narrative. On the Lebanese side, a Hezbollah lawmaker publicly rejected the idea of direct negotiations with Israel, portraying such talks as unacceptable under Lebanon's political and legal framework. That stance reflects Hezbollah's long-standing posture. It does not recognize Israel and opposes normalization, while insisting its weapons are necessary for deterrence. On the Israeli side, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly indicated openness to a diplomatic track with Lebanon, while simultaneously underscoring that military operations would continue. In a statement that captured Israel's dual approach of force and political messaging, Netanyahu said, He said, "I want to tell you there's no ceasefire in Lebanon. We are continuing to strike Hezbollah with force, and we will not stop until we restore your security." Asked. He said, following repeated appeals from the Lebanese government to enter into peace negotiations with us, "Last night I instructed the cabinet to open direct negotiations with Lebanon in order to achieve two goals. One, the disarmament of Hezbollah. Two, a historic, sustainable peace agreement between Israel and Lebanon." Those words, especially the demand for Hezbollah's disarm. Amen underline the gap between what Israel says it wants and what Hezbollah is prepared to accept. For Hezbollah, disarmament is not a negotiating point. It is the core of its identity and its power inside Lebanon. For Israel, Hezbollah's arsenal, particularly its precision-guided capabilities and mass rocket inventory, is seen as a strategic threat that cannot be managed indefinitely through deterrence alone. That is the collision point. One side viewing the weapons as the problem to be removed, the other viewing them as the reason it can't be coerced. And it is happening at the same time as U.S. and Iranian officials are attempting to shape a broader ceasefire framework, one that in Iran's view should include Lebanon. The talks themselves, as described in the wider reporting around them, are framed as part of a formally declared ceasefire environment, with both sides arriving to lay out positions on nuclear issues, sanctions-related demands. At the center of the U.S. position is the long-running demand that Iran must not obtain a nuclear weapon. Iran, for its part, has repeatedly insisted its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes while also seeking sanctions relief and guarantees. Overlaying that is the question of regional waterways and economic pressure points, including the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy corridors. In public remarks around this moment, U.S. President Donald Trump focused heavily on Hormuz and the nuclear issue, projecting confidence about U.S. leverage while emphasizing the no nuclear weapon bottom line. In one exchange, he said, "We're not going to let them hold this strait, are you? It's international." He followed with asterisk. He said, "No, we're not going to let that. It's international water." Asked what a good deal would look like, Trump answered, he said, "No nuclear weapon, number one." He continued, he said, "No nuclear weapon, that's 99% of it." Attitude, Trump also linked the nuclear issue to the expectation that maritime pressure would ease, saying, he said, "But the strait's going to open." Attitude, in the same set of comments, he pushed a narrative of U.S. military success and Iranian weakness, saying, he said, "We have the military is defeated, their military is gone." He added, asterisk, he said, "We've degraded just about everything. They have very few missiles. They have very little manufacturing capability. We've hit them hard." Asked that those statements matter not only for what they claim, but for what they signal, a U.S. posture that sees Iran under heavy pressure and believes it can dictate terms. Iran's posture, by contrast, has been to treat regional fronts, Lebanon included, as part of the strategic equation, arguing that any durable calm must be comprehensive, not selective. That is where Hezbollah's timing becomes politically charged. A surge of rockets and deep drones as talks open can be read in multiple ways, as a deliberate attempt to remind negotiators that the resistance axis has agency, as a way to raise the cost of excluding Lebanon from any ceasefire package, or as a signal to Israel that battlefield pressure will continue regardless of diplomatic theater elsewhere. But it also raises the risk of miscalculation. The more drones and rockets fly, the more likely it becomes that a strike lands in a way that forces a larger response, especially if civilians are killed in Israel or if a high-profile Hezbollah commander is targeted in Lebanon. Both sides have shown they can absorb a certain level of pain without changing course. The danger is what happens when they decide they can't. On the ground, the pattern is familiar and grim. Hezbollah emphasizes volume and persistence, waves of rockets, drone incursions, and anti-armor attacks designed to keep northern Israel under pressure and to claim battlefield relevance. Israel emphasizes intelligence-driven strikes and broad air campaigns designed to degrade Hezbollah's capabilities and to impose a cost that deters further attacks. Lebanon south absorbs much of the damage, with towns and villages repeatedly struck and rescue workers increasingly operating under threat. And hovering over all of it is the question diplomats may not be able to answer quickly. Can there be a regional ceasefire that holds if the Israel-Lebanon front is still burning? The next phase of these talks will test whether negotiators treat Lebanon as a central file or a downstream problem. Hezbollah's actions suggest it wants to force the first option. Israel's statements suggest it is not waiting for any external framework to handle Hezbollah for it. And the civilians on both sides of the border are left living under the sirens, the strikes, and the uncertainty of what comes next. Because if the goal is real security, not just a pause, then the border war can't simply be ignored. It has to be rest, contained, and ultimately resolved. And right now, it is doing the opposite of fading into the background. It is announcing itself loudly, right on cue. The timing is the point. When rockets and drones start moving at the exact moment diplomats sit down, it is rarely just about the tactical value of the strike itself. It is about authorship, who gets to define what calm means, what ceasefire covers, and which fronts are allowed to keep burning while others are negotiated away. Hezbollah's latest barrage, coming as U.S. and Iranian officials begin a fresh round of talks, reads like an attempt to prevent the Israel-Lebanon front from being treated as a detachable side file. If a deal is being shaped around nuclear limits, sanctions relief, and maritime security, Hezbollah is signaling that Lebanon cannot be managed later without consequences now. In other words, even if the big powers try to compartmentalize, the battlefield refuses. That does not automatically mean Hezbollah is acting as a direct Iranian spoiler on command. The relationship is closer and more complex than that. Hezbollah has its own domestic political constraints, its own deterrence logic, and its own need to demonstrate relevance after months of cross-border exchanges. But the strategic effect is similar either way. The escalation reminds everyone that any regional arrangement that ignores Lebanon will be fragile, because one actor with enough rockets, drones, and local legitimacy can keep the northern border in permanent crisis. This is also why the specific mix of munitions matters. Hezbollah's claim that it used large numbers of rocket weapons alongside drones, and that it employed qualitative weapons, is not just battlefield boasting. It is narrative engineering. Mass fire suggests volume and endurance. Drones suggest reach and surveillance. Qualitative suggests precision and escalation control. Together, the message becomes: we can hurt, we can persist, and we can choose out. Are rung on the ladder. The latter is the key. For months, the Israel-Lebanon confrontation has operated in a gray zone between limited war and pre-war. Each side tries to impose a ceiling without looking weak. Hezbollah wants to show it can punish Israeli deployments and border positions while avoiding a full invasion scenario that would devastate Lebanon. Israel wants to degrade Hezbollah's capabilities and reestablish deterrence while avoiding an open-ended ground war in the north. That balance is inherently unstable, and it becomes even more unstable when diplomacy elsewhere creates incentives to prove leverage. So yes, Hezbollah's timing can be read as an assertion that the so-called resistance axis will not simply accept rules written in Islamabad or anywhere else. But it is also about internal rules. Hezbollah must keep its constituency convinced that it is not watching Gaza and Lebanon burn while diplomats trade concessions. It must also keep Israel uncertain about what comes next, because uncertainty is part of deterrence. The transcripts claims dozens of rocket launches, drones, artillery shells, and a combined anti-armor strike fit Hezbollah's established playbook: saturate air defenses and sensors, probe for gaps, and publicize any alleged success against high-value targets like a Merkava tank. Even when the battlefield impact is unclear, the psychological impact is not. The Merkava is an icon of Israeli ground power. Claiming to burn one is meant to puncture the idea that Israel can dominate the border zone at will. But the second half of the story is the Israeli response. The transcript describes Israeli strikes across southern Lebanon, the Bekaa Valley, and Beirut's southern suburbs, with Israel claiming large Hezbollah casualties and a wide target set. That kind of campaign, if accurate in scale, signals that Israel is not treating Hezbollah's attacks as noise. It is treating them as a strategic threat requiring deep strikes, which carries its own risks. Each strike that kills Hezbollah members, and especially each strike that kills Lebanese civilians or emergency responders, increases pressure on Hezbollah to escalate and increases pressure on the Lebanese state to either restrain Hezbollah or admit it cannot. That is where the diplomatic track becomes tangled. Lebanon as a state is not Hezbollah. Yet Hezbollah is not a marginal militia either. It is a powerful armed actor with political representation and a deep social base. Any negotiation that claims to produce sustainable peace between Israel and Lebanon runs straight into that reality. Israel can negotiate with Lebanese officials, but if Hezbollah rejects the outcome and has the capacity to keep firing, what exactly has been achieved? This is why talk of direct negotiations and disarmament tends to sound like a non-starter from Hezbollah's perspective. Disarmament is not a small confidence-building measure. It is the core of Hezbollah's identity and deterrence, doctrine. It is also, in Hezbollah's view, what prevents Israel from imposing terms by force. So when Israeli leaders frame talks around Hezbollah's disarmament as a primary goal, Hezbollah is likely to interpret that not as diplomacy, but as a political strategy to achieve militarily what Israel cannot easily achieve on the battlefield. The transcript includes one line that captures Israel's posture toward Hezbollah in blunt terms. Israel's prime minister is quoted saying, asterisk, he said, I want to tell you there's no ceasefire in Lebanon. We are continuing to strike Hezbollah with force, and we will not stop until we restore your security. At Axe, that statement is not merely rhetorical. It tells Israeli audiences that the government does not consider itself bound by any broader diplomatic tempo. And it tells Hezbollah that Israel's operational campaign will continue even if other fronts quiet down. The same quote also includes a claim of Lebanese government appeals and an instruction to open direct negotiations framed around two goals. The prime minister is quoted as saying, asterisk, he said, last night I instructed the cabinet to open direct negotiations with Lebanon in order to achieve two goals. One, the disarmament of Hezbollah. Two, a historic sustainable peace agreement between Israel and Lebanon. Asterisk, placing disarmament first is deliberate. It defines peace not as mutual de-escalation, but as the removal of Hezbollah's military capability. Hezbollah's response, as reflected in the transcript through a lawmaker's rejection of direct negotiations, fits the movement's long-standing line. Talks that legitimize Israel or bypass Hezbollah's resistance framework are treated as violations of Lebanon's political and legal order. That stance also serves a tactical purpose. If Hezbollah can delegitimize negotiations at the constitutional level, it raises the political cost for Lebanese officials to engage, and it reduces Hezbollah's risk of being sidelined by a state state process. Now zoom out to the U.S.-Iran talks. Even without accepting every detail in the transcript's description, the structure of the bargaining is familiar: nuclear constraints, sanctions relief, maritime security, and regional de-escalation as a package. Iran's incentives are to widen the agenda. If Tehran can link nuclear concessions to regional ceasefires, it increases its leverage and can claim broader strategic gains. The U.S. Incentives are often the opposite. Keep the nuclear file as clean as possible while extracting promises, formal or informal, on proxies and shipping lanes. The transcript includes remarks attributed to U.S. President Donald Trump about the Strait of Hormuz, nuclear weapons, and military pressure. One line is especially central to the U.S. position as he frames it. He is quoted saying, he said, no nuclear weapon, number one. That is the simplest articulation of what Washington wants to be able to claim at home, that Iran's pathway to a bomb is blocked. The transcript also includes Trump's insistence on the strait's status. He is quoted saying, he said it's international water. Whether or not that is a legally precise phrasing, politically it telegraphs that Washington views any restriction of Hormuz traffic as unacceptable coercion. And it includes a striking claim about Iran's military condition. Trump is quoted saying, asterisk, he said, we have the military is defeated, their military is gone. Asterisk, that is a maximalist characterization, and it serves a negotiating function. It suggests Iran is bargaining from weakness and therefore should accept U.S. terms. But such claims can also backfire. If Iran's leadership believes Washington is trying to humiliate it publicly, it becomes harder for Tehran to compromise without appearing to surrender. This matters for Hezbollah because Hezbollah sits at the intersection of Iranian strategy and Lebanese reality. If Tehran wants a regional ceasefire, Hezbollah becomes both a tool and a complication. Tehran can encourage restraint, but Hezbollah may calculate that restraint without guarantees, invites Israeli escalation. Conversely, if Tehran wants leverage, Hezbollah's ability to raise the temperature on Israel's northern border is a powerful card, but it is a dangerous card because it could trigger a full-scale war that drags Iran into a crisis it does not want. So is the Lebanon front drifting toward its own full-scale war, separate from whatever Washington and Tehran agree? It is possible, and the conditions for that drift are already present. First, the operational tempo is rising. When barrages become larger and Israeli strike packages become broader, the margin for error shrinks. A drone that hits the wrong target, a strike that kills a high-profile commander, or a mass casualty event in a town can rapidly force escalation decisions. Second, the political narratives are hardening. Israel's leadership is publicly saying there is no ceasefire and tie ing diplomacy to Hezbollah's disarmament. Hezbollah is publicly demonstrating that the border is active and rejecting the legitimacy of direct talks. Those are not the narratives of two actors preparing for a mutual climb down. Third, the diplomatic calendar creates incentives to show strength. When major talks begin, each side's allies often try to demonstrate that they cannot be ignored. Hezbollah's timing in that sense is not random. It is a reminder that any agreement that does not include enforceable understandings on the Lebanon front may not survive first contact with reality. But there is another reading that is less dramatic and in some ways more worrying. This may be the new normal, a sustained, managed confrontation in which neither side wants full war, but both sides accept regular violence as the price of deterrence. That kind of forever border war is corrosive. It displaces civilians, wrecks local economies, and creates constant opportunities for miscalculation. For Israel, the strategic question is whether it can restore security in the north without a ground campaign that would be costly and politically risky. Air power can kill operatives and destroy infrastructure, but it rarely eliminates a deeply rooted organization's ability to fire rockets and drones, especially when that organization has had years to build redundancy. For Hezbollah, the strategic question is whether it can sustain operations without pushing Israel into a decision to expand the war. Hezbollah has historically tried to calibrate enough pressure to claim deterrence and solidarity with allies, not so much that it triggers an existential fight. But calibration becomes harder when casualties mount and when Israel expands its target set. For Lebanon, the tragedy is that the state is caught between them. Even if Lebanese officials want negotiations, they cannot guarantee enforcement on the ground. Even if they want neutrality, the border is a battlefield. And every escalade on further weakens state authority and deepens the sense that decisions about war and peace are being made elsewhere. The likely endgame, if diplomacy has any chance, is not immediate peace, and certainly not sudden disarmament. It is some form of sequencing, localized de-escalation mechanisms, tacit understandings about target sets, and eventually a political process that reduces the incentives for armed confrontation. That is slow, unattractive work. It does not fit the drama of symmetry, but it is often the only work that holds. Hezbollah's strikes as talks open are therefore less a single message than a bundle of messages. To Israel, that the northern front will not be pacified by pressure alone. To Lebanon's state, that Hezbollah will not be negotiated around. To Iran, that Hezbollah remains a valuable lever. And to Washington, that regional stability cannot be proclaimed into existence while one of the region's hottest borders is still exchanging fire. If Islamabad produce SA framework that treats Lebanon as an afterthought, Hezbollah is effectively warning that the afterthought will become the headline. And if Israel continues to insist that peace equals disarmament, Hezbollah is signaling that the battlefield will answer first and diplomacy can try to catch up later. The conclusion is not that a wider war is inevitable, but that the current trajectory makes it easier to stumble into one. The border is active, the rhetoric is uncompromising, and the diplomatic process is not yet anchored to enforceable realities on the ground. In that environment, every rocket wave and every airstrike is not just an event, it is a test of whose rules apply.